Hello friends, welcome back to another episode of Reddit ProRevenge. In this episode, you'll hear about thieves getting caught, a Halloween night revenge, how one person brings down an entire homeowners association, and someone who's sick and tired of getting mistreated, standing up for themselves. I hope you stay for all the stories today, and subscribe for future videos. This story's titled, Woman Tries to Steal My Safety, Gets a Criminal Record. Last Saturday, I rode to my town street mall. My bike has a helmet strap lock. It looks like you can just grab my helmet and take off, but you can't. After lunch, I saw a woman trying to get my helmet detached. Luckily, there was a mall cop nearby. I filled him in and told him that I was gonna confront her. As casually as I could, I wandered over and started asking her questions. Wow, what year's that? That an 800cc? Don't see too many woman riders. The mall cop was behind her the whole time. At first, she answered, but then told me to piss off. I replied, "Hold on, I'm interested in buying your bike." She said, "You can't have my bike. This is my bike. Get away from it." She got up, all huffy, and started swearing at me. Well, a real policeman ended up approaching us, and she turned to leave and ran into the mall cop. He grabbed her arm. We filled the real cop in as she tried to wriggle out. The mall cop had been filming on his phone and showed the real officer. She was taken to the station, immediately released, but got an $800 charge for an attempted robbery and a court date. This story's titled, I Took Away His Ride for Messing with Mine. Halloween 2012. It was around 2 a.m. and I had just arrived back home from a neighborhood party. As I walked towards my house and the porch light came on, I couldn't help but notice that the left side of my car was completely covered in egg. All over the window, all over the door, all down the windscreen, and underneath the window wipers too. I was naturally infuriated, but it was Halloween after all, and I'd just gotten unlucky and proceeded to spend 15 minutes trying to get the egg off of my car in the dark. After thinking I finally succeeded, I decided to sit in the car with a cigarette on the driveway and call my friend, and this is where it begins. As I sat there, I could see through the rearview mirror a car going past my house, slowing down, turning around and driving past again. It must have happened 4 to 5 times. What if these were the people who had egged my car, I thought. I explained to my friend that I needed to go, put the phone down, and continued to watch his car acting really strangely on the road out front, until it finally stopped, 2 meters in front of my driveway. The engine went off, and through the darkness, I could make out a tall hooded figure slowly depart from his crapmobile and walk up to the rear of my car. He was checking around him and looking in the direction of the house before he crouched down behind my car and went out of sight. Was this the guy who had vandalized my car? What's he up to now? Without hesitation, I launched myself out of the driver's seat and charged around the side of my driveway. He was obviously not expecting that as he bolted away from the house and his car down the street in record-beating sprint. I looked down and saw 2 massive fireworks shoved into my car's exhaust, which he was about to light while I sat in the car. By this time, he was well out of sight, so I walked up to his car. He had left the windows down on the driver's side. I put my head through and saw 2 guys sitting there silently, staring at me in complete horror, and to my surprise, the keys were still in the ignition. I quickly yanked them out and walked back into my house. I had taken his car prisoner on my driveway. Without hesitation, I was on the phone to the police. They said they were on the way and wanted to know where the guy was. By this time, he had come back to the house and began banging on the front door, shouting threats and demanding his keys back. Then the flashing lights came. I stood there, holding his keys while he was swiftly arrested for attempted arson and vandalism. Halloween was complete. I still have no idea who he was or why he was targeting me. But I did get a thank you from the police because he was well known to them though. The car was removed first thing in the morning, and I assume his friends bailed out of the car before the police came. This story's titled, The Whole Homeowners Association Gets Tyrannosaurus Wrecked. Literally. I used to live in a 2-story townhouse in Vancouver around 2010 with my parents. Keep in mind that this is Canada, where the HOAs are not as common as the USA and are not seen as evil. But this HOA was different. First, the characters. My mother was a 50-year-old woman working at a grocery store, and she wore a headscarf. She was a very nice woman to everyone she met, including people she knew that hated her for whatever. Kill 'em with kindness, right? I was in engineering school and was about to graduate in a few months. What the problem was, these HOA bastards were a group of fat asses and probably retired and stay-at-home moms and dads. They made bullshit rules like all the floor mats must be straight against the door, and inspection of your suite will be done bi-monthly, and the worst of which was no overnight or late night guests. We owned our residence, and here these bastards were trying to ruin it by making it seem as if we were tenants. My family was wanting to bring my grandmother to Canada, and the visa had just made it through. We were excited to have her, so we go to the airport and come back with her. The meeting of the HOA asshats is on the way. One of the ladies from the HOA asked us straight and said, "Who is this, and why does she have bags?" I said she'll be staying with us for a month, and it's my granny. The hippo's eyes locked onto my gran and pretty much said, "You can't be here." Since my gran didn't speak English, she looked at me in confusion. In the end though, my mom and I had a large convo with POS, and she agreed to give us one last warning, whatever. The next day, at 11 freaking PM, she knocks on the door. She then said, "I'm going to let you know that I'll have to give you guys fines if I cannot see your mother's back on the security cameras. Her face was visible, but I need a proper view in case we get burglars." It was late, so I didn't argue, so I went back without telling my mother. The next day, she confronts my mom. My mom was furious and told her to leave and not be racist. The HOA POS yelled at her and called her a fucking bitch, mixed along with some other stuff, and left. I'll never forget that night. My mother wept like a baby for the night, and it was the worst night of my life, second to only when she passed away last year. I could not see this BS continue. I did what I thought would be best. I went around and took questions from every single house and asked about this bitch. They all said the same thing. And on my way home, I noticed a fucking fine being written on our door for failing to keep our floor mat straight and up against the door. It's a circle. How are we supposed to make it straight against the door? At any rate, I spent some time on Reddit, asking legal advisors from Canada on what can be done. They all recommend that I get a form of proxy for all residents that will let me vote for them just via myself. I got around 50 people out of 60 to sign it, and boy was I ready. The next election, I voted every single one of those cocksuckers out and made my mother the head of the association. I got the position of vice president and removed all those rules. The next day, I made rules for the new HOA, and all it said was literally this: the HOA exists only to make sure no other HOA could take its place. There are absolutely no enforced rules here besides keeping your portion of the hallway clean and no interfering with other members' residence. And this, my friends, is how I made the old HOA extinct. The bitchy people became really friendly afterwards. This story's titled, "Church Camp is Hell." So a few hours ago, I was a worker for this Baptist summer camp not far from my home. We'll just call it what it is: hell. I'd been a devoted staff member for 3 years, even managing the concession stand for one of them. I was a hard worker, consistently jumping in to do jobs that nobody really wanted to do, like trash, pulling weeds, restocking vending machines, etc. On top of that, I was generally the favorite staffer of the kids that rolled through camp. Now, camp policy was for staff to live on campus when they were working, which, for most staff, was a weekday. Those of us that worked weekends had to request it. I did this frequently as I genuinely loved the work I was doing. I even worked the off-season as much as I could. Midway through my 3rd summer in hell, I ended up with a really bad inner ear infection, so I took my allotted week off to recover. Toward the end of the week, I was asked to be on call for the weekend. I didn't have my driver's license at the time, and my family was doing 3.5 hours out of town for the weekend, so I requested to stay on campus in case I was needed. I was told that was not a problem. That was incorrect. 2 hours after arriving on Friday, I'm called down to the dining hall, where the week's staff was having their final meeting to receive paychecks and debrief. I think nothing of this. I come walking into the dining hall, thrilled to see my companions for the first time in little over a week, to find the owner of the camp, we'll call him Phil, sitting with the entire staff. Phil asks me to come sit with him, and I oblige. As far as I was aware, he was pretty fond of me, so I wasn't concerned. I was wrong to think that way. The following conversation unfolded in front of 30 of my coworkers. Phil says, "What are you doing here, pal?" I replied, "I was asked to be on call, sir. I was told I could stay on campus since my family's out of town for the weekend." He replied, "I see. Well, we don't need you. You can go home." I actually can't. My family's out of town and my dad has my house key and I don't drive." Phil then said, "I'm sorry to hear that. You'll have to find somewhere to go then because you can't stay here." Me, very calm through this whole ordeal, said, "Phil, I don't have anywhere I can go." Phil, being the guy he is, says, "Again, I'm sorry to hear that, but it's not really my problem, is it? You should have thought this one through." So at this point, the entire room has gone silent. All of my coworkers are watching, in shock, completely unsure of how to react to this. And then Phil notices. He then goes on and says, "You know what? I'm sorry. You can stay here. But I'm going to work you hard, and you'll be working for the housing, alone. I won't be paying you, and you'll have to figure food out." He then looks to the staff, who are even more horrified now, and addresses them. He then asks them, "Am I being unfair? Do y'all think this is unreasonable?" Nobody said a word. I'm fuming. My face is probably very visibly red, and I'd love nothing more than to explode, but I do my best to stay calm through this whole thing. I say that I'll figure something out and leave without another word. That night was spent sleeping on the side of the road, just off the property. The next day, I started forming my plan. My parents are aware of the situation and want desperately to come get me, but I refused this. I spend Saturday hiding in my coworker's room. They were checking my room for me like I was some kind of criminal. And Sunday night, I sleep in my room because, at this point, I just really don't give a flying fuck. Monday morning, I make my way into the dining hall out of uniform and take a seat. When the whole staff is present, I stand. It was my day to deliver our devotional, so nobody really thought anything of it. My speech was as follows. I said, "My fellow staff members, you were all present Friday to witness the way I was treated by our loving and fearless leader, Phil. I'm sure many of you were uncomfortable through the course of our conversation, but I want you all to be assured that I got along just fine. Did I resort to sleeping on the side of the road like an animal? Yes. Did I hide on campus for the rest of the weekend and having to beg someone to sneak food to me? Again, yes. But that's all right. I must ask you though, if Phil has no problem treating me this way, after giving 3 years of my life to this camp, how do you think he's going to treat you? He was more than happy to put me on the street for a weekend, knowing that I had nowhere to go. And, correct me if I'm wrong, but that doesn't seem very Christ-like to me. So endure his mistreatments as long as you want, but I think I've had enough." With that, I walked out the door, with 10 of my coworkers right behind me. The following week, I caught wind of another 15 quitting, after enduring half an hour of Phil shit-talking me to the staff. The camp was left with maybe 6 employees as a group of 850 campers were coming through, and I'd honestly have never felt so powerful. Hey friends, I hope you enjoyed these stories today. If you want to submit your own stories, my Discord server is in the link below. Also, if you aren't subscribed, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss future stories. See you guys in the next one.